So, thank you so much for joining us today. This is regrettably the last session of the day, but hopefully we're gonna, take it out with a bang. This is gonna be a very raw and unfiltered discussion that will hopefully help you on your startup journey. My name is Bassel Fatin. I'm the principal startup advocate at AWS, and I have with me today a truly remarkable and distinguished panel of guests. Before I introduce my guests, and I hope this is fine with you guys, since this is the last session of the day, and some of you might need to leave early, or there will be, I don't know, a fire alarm and we all need to run out or something like that, in that contingency, I was thinking I would just give you all the condensed value up front so that if anything happens, you've gotten the value and you've left and we can sleep easy at night. Is that cool with you guys?
Fair enough.
Is that okay with you guys? Okay, so, and I'll try to keep this very, very brief. I'd like to give you the 5 pieces of golden advice that 100% guarantee startup success, okay? Advice number 1. I want you to please look first to your left. Look at the person to your left. Okay? Look at the person to your right. Statistically speaking, both of these people will try to steal your startup idea. So don't tell your startup idea to anyone. Advice number 1, the idea is everything. Protect it at all costs. The likelihood of someone else having a good idea is nearly 0%. That's just math. Okay? The fact that you have a great idea means you are a genius and the universe has chosen you, okay? So you need to protect this treasure. Now, you may ask me, but Bassel, if I can't tell my idea to people, how can I talk to users early on and get some market research? Well, to you I'd ask, why don't you believe in yourself? I believe in you. I'd like you to believe in you. Okay? What you need to do, number 2, is build in isolation and launch with one big bang, and everyone will clap for you. Okay? You need to go into a silo, preferably a cave, build your masterpiece, don't let anyone interrupt you, and then you'll step out with your solution and everyone will clap and you will be rich and famous. Number 3, some people confuse a small business and a startup. A small business is not a startup. Okay? A startup is a vehicle to show the world how awesome you are. All right? So the key is you're going to meet a lot of people. Either they're going to believe in you or they're not going to believe in you. And you need to divide them aggressively into those 2 categories. I would suggest you keep an Excel spreadsheet with those who believe in you and those who don't believe in you, because that's what it's about. Number 4, some people think that a pitch is a way to summarize your business for investors. It's not. A pitch is like a magic trick, okay? It's misdirection. You want to wave this hand while showing something else. The market's not overcrowded. It's very well validated, right? I'm not inexperienced here. I have a fresh, disruptive perspective, okay? And now I want you to pay attention very closely to this sentence. If we just get 1% of our total addressable market, that's $500 million in ARR. Remember this sentence, and if you say it in any meeting with an investor, it's a FOMO-inducing sentence. They cannot help themselves. They must sign a term sheet after hearing this sentence. And finally, the big secret is the word up. It's hidden in plain sight, startup. As long as you show charts of things going up, you're good. So you grow at all costs, at any means necessary. You must show something going up, and if something's not going up, you make it go up, or you find a new it. And if you think that there might be some future liabilities to this approach, then you're missing then the 6th biggest and most bonus point is you're not living in the moment, and that's all entrepreneurship is. Those are the 5 plus the 1 bonus. Thank you so much. Now, thank you so much. If you're free to leave, but I would highly suggest you don't. My amazing panelists, please introduce yourselves. Karina.
I start. Well, Thanks for having me. Hi, everyone. Karina. Most of you don't know me because I didn't listen to you. So, what's my story? Today, I'm actually a venture capital investor, but why I am on this panel is because I have a great startup fuck-up story to tell. after I quit my trading job, we founded the Age Tech Wiser. So Age Tech, think of aging society and people getting older but not retiring later. So what we did, we were matching retirees again for project-based work, because turned out that they actually do want to continue doing something to feel like they have a purposeful and social life. So we were matching them, and then later helped corporates also offboard their retiring employees into retirement and make sure that the know-how is not lost. We were growing both user sides very nicely, but didn't hit product market fit really. And then COVID was really not nice to us as well. So recruiting plummeted, and our target group of elderly was the high risk group, supposed to be protected. So timing was shit, and we decided to just close the company. And more details later on the panel.
Excellent, excellent. Nico.
Hi, can anybody hear me? All right. So I'm Nico, I'm CEO at TourRadar. Quick introduction about TourRadar. We're the world-leading adventure booking platform, offering about 50,000 organized adventures worldwide in about 170 countries in the world. We organize adventure, if you think about like a 10-day safari in Namibia, or 5-day hiking up Kilimanjaro, or even 20-day bus tour through Europe or Southeast Asia. So we bring that basically onto one platform. And I guess the main reason why I'm here is we had a lot of ups and downs, obviously. And I think one of the things that resonated the most to your introduction is about product and product fit and launching everything at once. But it took us about 6 years to find product market fit. We initially launched as a B2B SaaS product, trying to help tour operators drive quality and engagement to their customers. They loved the product, but they didn't realize what is actually the but they didn't want to pay for it. They didn't have to see that. They didn't want to actually use it, and the customers didn't really engage with it. We shifted over to a meta search provider, driving customers to the operators. They loved the fact that we're driving traffic, but they couldn't attribute then the booking to the actual traffic that we're driving to them. So they only saw us as a tax. And then we had to shift completely to the one thing that we said we would never do, which was going to the booking and going to the transaction. And we always thought, hey, it's way too complicated to do. It's like nobody's going to be booking 3,000 euros online. And we're like, okay, we just have to try it because everything else is not working. And then that was in the end the one turning point that allowed us to kind of succeed and start getting some traction. But it took us a good 6 years to get to that point.
Fantastic.
So.
Robin.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for sticking around today. My name is Robin Major. I'm a go-to-market advisor for startups. I'm living my career in reverse, having started in big business. I left a scale-up that was acquired for $2 billion in 2005 and went and found my first startup. In the last 18 years, I've worked with 12 startups, 5 of which have been acquired, 1 for $150 million, 3 of which are still going strong in the market, and one has an annual run rate of 100 million. And 2 are still clients. I'm currently serving as the CRO of Moflix, which is a startup based in Switzerland and Finland. More about that later. And we help telcos in the telecommunications industry make it as easy for you to sign up for their services and manage them as it is signing up for Netflix or WhatsApp. So it's quite a disruptive play in the telco market. And I'm really here to help deliver a 7th bonus point to Basil's list, which is if you don't hire a sales force, the product will sell itself and people will queue around the block to buy it. And I wish you all the best of luck, and thank you very much for attending today.
So, hi everybody, my name is Juan. I'm co-founder and CTO at Gronda. Gronda is, just for those who don't know us, we are the #1 community for chef worldwide. We help them to share their knowledge by sharing the recipes that they create. And then for other chefs to search inspiration online. So imagine Michelin star chef sharing a recipe in Paris. They either can create a book which costs you around 30, 40,000 bucks, or they can post it on a platform where this can be distributed with around 2 million users worldwide in 160 countries, and then someone probably in Argentina or Dubai sees this recipe and can apply this in their menu in the restaurant in South America, for example. I guess I'm here because we had quite of a journey of 6-7 years where we started actually solving a problem in the B2B business. So my co-founder has a hotel, and he came once to me and say, "Hey man, we don't find people." So we started building this whole journey. Well, we started our company building a recruitment platform for hotels, and throughout I think it was 3-4 years we literally built for his parents and didn't listen anything about anything or anyone outside of us. Because we, as you said, Basil, before, we had the best idea ever. So we spent months and years building what we thought was the best idea ever, and it turns out that it wasn't. And it needed, we went through a lot of, processes. We say, okay, now, people are churning because we don't have enough users. So we had the genius idea of creating content. And it was during the COVID time that suddenly, it was not relevant anymore to hire people. I heard that restaurants were closed. So people say, we are not going to pay you anymore. So from one day to another, we didn't have any revenue. And what happened is we needed to, get out there and start talking to users. And we had the idea of, okay, start monetizing our content and asking users, hey, would you pay for it, maybe? And it turns out that they love it and they start to pay. And we have grown now, I would say, 10x probably from what we used to have pre-COVID to now 2 million users. And I think that was, that learning. I think what we can also talk today and some of the, fuck-ups that we had as founders in the early days.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, let's dig in. I just want to make sure you guys realize you should have done the opposite of what I said earlier on, right? I just want to make this perfectly clear for legal purposes. I will not, and neither will AWS, be legally liable if you did not get the irony earlier. I just want to say this. Okay, so let's begin with the ideation phase, with ideas. So everyone knows that the relationship between founders and their ideas, it's quite intimate and some would say sensual. Please tell me, in terms of your ideas when you started, what was your relationship with the idea and how did being too attached with the idea itself potentially lead you astray or waste some time? Whoever wants to begin, go ahead. Juan?
I can start. So I put a sentence to it which says, you are one feature away from growth. So we founders, we always fall in love with other ideas, and you're thinking like, all right, this is gonna be the next thing, and you start building it, you start, putting all your passion, and then you go there and nobody uses it, and you're like, they don't understand it. And then you do again and again and again until eventually either you realize or you close your company. And it happened to us, right? So it happened to us for like 3.5 years. And as I say before, until COVID happens, and we needed to go out there and talk to our users. That was one of the biggest learnings in this ideation phase. Basically going there, failing and validating with our users was extremely important. One of the biggest learnings and super expensive learning for us. It took us, 3-4 years and COVID. To actually start doing what we should do from the very beginning.
So it took COVID to kind of...
Yeah, COVID was kind of like a slap in the face, like, hey, you should start talking to your users, dude. So
COVID slapped many people in the face.
Yeah, okay, I don't want to be rude, I'm sorry about that, but in our business, it was a slap and say, hey, start talking to people because otherwise you need to close. And we had 30 people at the time and we needed to sadly lay off, and it was a moment of retrospective and say, okay, what are you gonna guys do? Are you gonna really do something about it? You're going to change the industry, then start talking to the people who are working in the industry.
Nico, I think you had something quite similar happen, right? In terms of the idea and
the idea, yeah. So I mean, it's even worse because like the founder Travis, he even started back already in 2003 with a company called Bug Bitten. It's like bitten by the travel bug, and that was back in the day when social media didn't really exist, and he started there trying to start up a business, and then in that phase, from 2003 all the way up to 2010, he realized there's this market gap around tour operators and multi-day tours, and that's where then the idea started coming up. Hey, there's some technology gap between within that market space, and then through that we were able to kind of start working with the tour operators, trying to understand where the problem spaces really are. But we started as a B2B SaaS company, and we loved the product ourselves. The operators loved it, but we just couldn't make it work. And it really took us 2 years to figure that out. To then say, hey, we need some pivot, and then really show the value to the operators that we're driving to them by driving, for example, users to them. And then we tried to figure out, hey, let's get demand coming in. So we figured out, hey, the B2C, how do we get demand to them, and figure out how to drive traffic and send them the leads. And then once we had the leads to them, they were pissed off that they were paying for the leads that they thought they were getting directly anyways. Because they didn't really attribute that booking that we're sending to them as our kind of traffic source, but because they just thought, hey, they're doing the transaction and all the work anyways. And then it was like, hey, we were just a tax, and they didn't want to pay us, and so we're fighting to get paid with the operators.
So there was no way to continue to delude
no
yourself about it was a very aggressive kind of
very aggressive then relationship, and it wasn't like a homogeneous and like partnership which is what we were trying to build up. And then we're like, okay, we have to kind of go into this booking and the transaction, then prove to the operators that, hey, it's actually us driving that revenue to them. And then one side, we gained value for the operator because they saw the value that we're bringing to them. And then at the same time, we brought an industry online and made it bookable for customers as well. So we brought the value to the customer as well. So it was like a two-sided approach. And it actually helped us in the hindsight, because on the marketplace side, you always have the problem between supply and demand. So we built it up through the B2B and the initial kind of affiliate kind of meta search model. We had both sides built up, and then it was just building that transactional thing. So in the end, it was like a stepped approach, but it was a complete pivot at the same time.
Right. Karina, now you had a very odd variation of this problem, because your idea was the kind of idea when you tell it to anyone, they'd say, oh, this is fantastic.
So great.
Can you tell us a bit how that was a problem, that the idea sounded so great?
I think it was overall our biggest problem ever. So, as you mentioned, no matter who we talked to about the idea that we had, so it was not just our idea, the founders being like ignorant to the market. So basically we went out, we got hundreds of signups, then thousands of signups, because everybody thought it was so amazing. Journalists wrote about it. Oh yeah, that's so important. Everybody had like a mother who went into retirement and like, this is for my mother, I have to sign her up. Or this is for my boss, he doesn't want to retire because they're lonely and don't feel needed and want to pass on their knowledge. So it was so emotional that it got so much attention and PR and so forth and so forth. So we really had an idea market fit. Everybody loved the idea, not just us founders. And it made it so hard to really realize that this does not translate to product market fit.
Right.
So, it's not product market fit when somebody tells you, I need this.
Right. But
it's only product market fit when they're willing to pay for it as well.
Right.
So,
and how long did it take for you to really realize that?
COVID.
Also.
Yeah, I think we all had a bit the similar story. We needed a slap in the face.
Sure.
And we had this another problem. So we were aware of not having product market fit. So when a few clients came and said, "Can you help us with like the employees that we have who are going into retirement? Like we have hundreds, some have thousands, retiring in 5 years. Some even lose 20% of the entire workforce going into retirement." And then yeah, great. We can build like a B2B SaaS out of that. We did that, and then we had the idea, let's build a SaaS-enabled marketplace. So that's even better, and then we will fuel, it
down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, and it's gonna be so beautiful together. So we were not focused.
Yeah. Okay.
We built both at the same time with a team of. We were never more than 11.
Because there were cheerleaders cheering you in so many
everybody
directions.
was cheering. It was
so
amazing. And then only when COVID hit, we realized, okay, we don't have the resources to build two. We pivoted just to the B2B SaaS, but it was not the easiest time to onboard enterprise clients during a pandemic. So,
There are I think bringing it back to ideation, I think my view is there's surprisingly few bad ideas out there. There are just plenty of ideas that haven't found their right time yet. And I think when I work with startups, I talk a lot about the four T's of being a startup. It's about your technology, your team, your timing, and your traction. And there's so many ideas out there. I mean, I think I was in my 20s when I predicted that we'd be listening to music on our mobile phones. In my head, it meant we'd have enough capacity on the SIM card to be able to store music on there. And then when Steve Jobs launched a music player that had a hard disk in it, I went, that's terrible. If you're jogging, if you're doing any exercise with a hard disk in it, it's going to jog. It's going to come down to having it on memory in the phone. And if I'd invested in that and done something about it 30 odd years ago, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you about it today. But
thanks for letting us know that you wouldn't be here with us.
So I think, I've seen this a lot with some of the startups I've worked with, that we've had a really good idea. We've predicted an outcome. I'm kind of dealing with it now in Moflix, and that the telecommunications industry I work in is very slow to move, very slow to adopt new ideas. And I've walked away from businesses in the past where I've just gone, this is not the right time. And then there you are, 5-10 years later, the whole industry's changed in that direction. Who'd have predicted that we'd have Spotify, streaming music now in the way that we are, and 20 years ago everyone was saying, no one's ready to give up on CDs or physical media. So I think the timing aspect of an idea is just as important as the idea itself, as well as the sort of the other elements of how you deliver it in the market. Yeah.
Interesting. What's interesting about your perspective also is you see it from a sales perspective. So
I do, yeah.
when you're discussing and giving your insights to the founders when they get a new idea, it could be a new feature or a new market or something like that. You're always looking for it. I think translating to, will this sell and can we sell this? So tell us a bit about that dialogue, because that's a very realistic way to look at things.
Well, it is.
Right?
I think this is related to the idea as well, because everyone's idea is genius, and everyone's it's going to change the world. And I think the product market fit question is a really important test of how viable it is today in today's market. We see a lot of startups going out, getting an idea, building it quickly on something like AWS, which allows you to sort of click together all these elements really quickly.
Which is the best place to build.
Produce
by the
a
way.
platform, and we may as well throw that advertisement in here as we're sitting here at AWS Summit. But you can prototype really quickly. You can launch an MVP. You can get it into the market really quickly. And I think then the mistake we make is that we think the first 2 or 3 people who are our friends or the investors talk to or convinced to buy it are sufficient of a proof point that this idea has really got its time now. I think sort of just establishing enough of a runway of product market fit and being able to prove really we've got a sort of a product that is useful, that sells, that people will pay money for, and we can start to see that as a repeatable, scalable way of doing things in the market is a slightly longer process than most people are willing to give it credit for.
Yeah.
And I think I see a lot of startups sort of trying to scale too quickly with an idea that they think's had its time, that they think they've got product market fit, and they run straight into the wall because the reality is it was never there.
Yeah, totally. So this is actually a very good point to jump into, which is product market fit, right? Well, this is like such a gray area to a lot of startups because it's hard to define, right? And it's very different from startup to startup. And I talk to a lot of founders, and often I find like when founders get together and they talk about product market fit, they become a bit like teenage boys. It's like, have you found product? Oh yeah, I've totally found product market fit. It's amazing when you get product market fit. Man, it's nothing like it. And in reality, probably none of them have product market fit. And maybe like that one silent dude who hasn't talked, he has product market fit. So how do we define product market fit? Like each one of you, like when you look at it now, having gone through these experiences, what is product market fit, and how do you figure out what features do you build to be able to get there?
I've spoken enough on that one. I'll go to somebody else.
Wow. Whoa. That was so I think if we see if we see what happened, for example, with Gronda, I think the moment was when we first of all started to have like this growth that was not paid, first of all. So we started to see, okay, people coming to our application that we were not paying. So, no, it was not just paid acquisition. I think was one of the first things, indicators. And second, when you start seeing people that start even sharing, we're connected to the same, start sharing what they're using with their friends, and you start having this K factor, so to say, that now everybody knows, we don't know why. But you have this K factor, you start seeing moving more towards the 1 point something. So I think this virality, I think is a moment where you say, okay, my product is actually really growing and working. And to be honest, personally, now it doesn't matter where I go in the world. If I enter a restaurant and I ask the kitchen, they know it. At least one person knows it. I think for me, it's also an indicator, okay, things are working out pretty well for us. But that's basically what I could say. Maybe I can build on other ideas.
Yeah, what about you, Karina? Because now you talk to, founders talk to you for investment. So you're probably thinking about, have they achieved product market fit, or are they likely to? So how do you look at it from an investment point of view?
So to be honest, maybe I was a bit different, a bit less self-confident. So deep down in yourself, you know when you have product market fit. So no matter if you tell people, in a group of guys and tell, I have it, deep down, you know you don't have it. So, and I obviously was very transparent. So I couldn't also not fool anybody. And like now, it's really like, are you able to say what your unique economics are? Can you say, I put this dollar in and it gives me that? Can you show that? And like in real numbers and not, predicted.
And vanity.
Yeah, exactly. And so if we see that, if you can show that and you can prove it, it's pretty much obvious for us.
And when you do interact with a founder who's very passionate, but they're kind of showing you those vanity metrics to make it look like they have product market fit. How do you approach, because as an ex-founder also you have that empathy, you know where they're coming from.
And
so tell us a bit about that.
It helps. So, we invest prior to product market fit. So I think they also try not to fool us because they are aware that they are still in a testing phase. And I try to tell them, look, you don't have to show me like these magic numbers because I know you're in an experimenting phase.
Right.
And we are there to be with you here in the experimenting phase. So we invest in super early stage. There is an idea, there's a market, and there are founders. And we just evaluate, do we have a perfect founder market fit here? We are aware that the product might change in the future. So, but yes, of course, when they first pitch you, they try to tell you that this is the product that's going to solve the problem.
Yeah.
Whereas I always take them back and tell them, please don't be in love with the product. Be in love with the problem. I need to see that they are passionate about the problem.
Right.
And go back again and try to find the best solution that can solve the problem and not talk too much about the product.
I wish there were more investors like you.
Yeah, me too. That's what I was thinking. I think everyone here is thinking this.
Founder turned investor is a very founder-friendly investor.
Part of this problem, especially in the recent market up until now, when everyone's looking for the next unicorn, is this whole investor FOMO that says if I bring you a pitch that says we're going to be the next ChatGPT or we're going to be the next Spotify or whatever it was at the time, then people start falling over themselves to throw money at a problem. And I worked for a startup where we raised $100 million, right, in financing. We built a sales team of 8 people globally to go and sell a product that didn't even exist yet, hadn't even got off the drawing board, and they were there scaling it, trying to go and ram it in the face of a customer base. Did they have product market fit? No, they didn't have a product. And that was to please an investor who basically said, "I'm going to give you $100 million. You better make that pay back quickly because I think you've got a great idea." And I think that sort of is a bit of a two-way street in terms of who's driving whom to exhibit unreasonable behavior here.
Right. So, moving out of the ideation and product market fit. So now things are going very well and there's sales or a big round of funding. A lot of entrepreneurs think that they're home free. Now things are going well. We've made a lot of money. There's a lot of money in the bank. It's smooth sailing from here, which is far from the case, right?
Yeah.
More money, more problems, I guess would be the basic way to say it. So from a growth perspective, like the problems of growth, tell us about when you hit those hockey stick curves and the different kinds of problems started happening. If Nico, you'd like to.
I can, okay. Yeah, so I think we made every mistake in the book that is probably possible, but the one that probably resonates the most with me and was probably the biggest problem point is focusing on management. So we had, back in the day, as a founder and leadership team, you're in the weeds. You're doing everything yourself. You're like loving the problem. You're doing everything from marketing to product to legal, everything. and it's and at the same time you're very young. You don't have any experience as a manager, so that kind of leads you into the direction of becoming most likely a micromanager instead of like an enabler or a multiplier, and that's exactly in my case what happened. But so what we did is back in the day is like we had a discussion while we were starting to grow in the leadership team, and one of the big questions was, hey, should we start thinking about getting a people manager or HR team in place? And we're like, nah, we got this. Let's focus on getting a recruiter, head of recruitment. We need to focus on the problem, get the individual contributors. And that led then to the problem that I had then in the end, like 45 direct reports. Which was just insane.
45?
How? Didn't make sense at all. Just totally didn't make sense. And then we obviously then got this management layer, and only by the time we had about 200 people in the company, we actually got an HR team in place and a people team, which is just insane, and I would highly, highly recommend not doing that. But as an early stage founder, the one key thing I would say is make sure you as a leadership team get management training so that you can also then bring it down the level to the people below so that you can also upskill the individual contributors that you have in the team to also become managers. And doing that early on definitely would have helped us on a lot of pain points that we've had.
Yeah, I think to add on that, I think like that specific thing you said, founders, early stage founders, to get management training is super important, right? Like if I see myself, I failed completely. It was ridiculous last year. I think like I went from the innovator, the founder, technical founder, creating those features to suddenly like I was not able to manage people. It was really my brain was always thinking about how to produce more technology, and that transition, that bridge, I was not able to take it, which was a major failure. I would say in my career that actually then I was able to readjust and focus on what I needed to. But if we would not have as founders haven't talked about that, it would have been end up probably in the same situation. So we were able to catch it early on, but I think everybody goes through the same problem.
I would even say coaching is better than management training because that's not the only challenge you will face. Every time you reach a certain stage with a startup, you have different challenges as well. So I think the biggest bonus you can have as a founder is to always reflect on yourself, to be honest, and be humble and question stuff that you're doing and that might have worked in the previous phase, to also, upskill yourself for the next phase and the next one. Yeah. So you see it very often that founders, at some point maybe are not founders anymore, or go back and are retrieved from the C-level just because it's a different stage and it might not make sense anymore. Right. So you really have to prepare for all the steps you're taking. And I think coaching is very, very good. So we should have really always budgeted in like coaching for all founders.
But I think rarely founders would think about coaching.
You don't actually. Usually it happens when there's founder fights, and then you get like a mediator on board, and then you realize maybe we should have started with coaching a bit earlier on.
Some adult in the room like, oh, please stop everybody now.
Being the founder is a very, very lonely space, and bringing a coach in early is critical.
I think you're going to get different coaching needs as well. If you're a first-time founder and you've never really sort of had to come to terms with growing a business at all, that's going to have a very different sort of coaching need than if you've been a founder a few times, but you've never quite got to that sort of the traction stage that we're talking about, where you really need to sort of grow and be willing to sort of challenge your own limitations in terms of, am I really the person to take this from being a great idea in a garage to being, a multi-10 or $100 million run rate business? And I think that's something to keep an eye on and keep a sense of perspective on. I think there's a couple of other dimensions on the traction side, if you don't mind me carrying on.
Of course.
I think no battle plan survives first contact with the enemy, and I think even if you think you've got established solid market fit, when it really starts to get the traction, then you start to learn all sorts of interesting things about your business that you just had no idea about. And a lot of focus is put on building a sales team, growing the sales team, managing that complexity, and maintaining some cultural consistency while you're doing that. I think the other thing that sort of people lose sight of is that the product will also need to evolve and need to change as the market really comes into contact with it. There are too many founders who think that my product is set now. It's the protected crown jewels of what we do. It'll just, the market traction will not impact my plans in that direction. The reality is, the more people you start getting onto your product, especially if it's enterprise and there's any complexity involved, the more you're going to have to start scaling your product development and product management organization as well to support that real life interaction with real businesses.
So as you're scaling up your workforce, what are your thoughts on hiring at scale? Because there's usually two different camps. One is like really doesn't put much thought into it. It's just kind of like anyone who's excited about our vision, welcome. And then there's another that put candidates through like a grueling 7 assessment stage process. So like, what are your thoughts on hiring at scale? Whoever wants to jump in.
As I'm talking about it, I'm happy to jump in on it if you want. Yeah. So I think, look, we live in a very digital, virtualized world now, where especially in the technology world, you have a whole global workforce of very, very talented people who you wouldn't necessarily get to meet if you just walked out your front door and walked down your street or walked in your town. And I work for a company that's based in Tampere in Finland. They've got a very good technical university, and right now our CTO is very focused on having people who live and work in Tampere. There's going to come a point where that is just not going to be sustainable and scalable anymore, right? And we're going to have to look for cleverer ways to either outsource complete work packages or to outsource individual tasks and bring people into a virtual team that we can manage using virtual tools on an objectives-led basis, rather than sort of you turned up to the office and I could see you stamped in and stamped out. And I think for me, when you're doing that and you've got that global footprint, having a really good, solid recruiter that you trust is a really important tool. I think having a good, solid recruitment platform that you can use to sort of test people and validate their skills and what they bring to the table remotely, without them having to sort of fly around the world and create a load of problems, both from a sustainability and an economic point of view, just to have a job interview. I think it's really important that you lean into those factors really early on.
I think you both have very distributed workforces, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Do you have any experiences with
so
that?
actually, we started Gronda in 3 different countries. I think it was Brazil, Austria, and Germany, and then now we are in 7 countries, 12 nationalities in the team. So I mean, it was previous COVID, after COVID. I think extremely amazing for us, to be honest. It has enabled us to get access to people that you could not get probably only in Germany or only in Austria. So it has been a blessing for us being able to have that. I mean, also the different, I would say, different cultures, different perspective to solve problems has been extremely important to how to address certain issues that happen either inside of the team or even in the product. So for us, it worked quite well. I think we have certain guidelines, so to say, like we have, 3 hours here, 4 hours there. So you have this time frame that you can work and hire, because otherwise it becomes really complicated, to work with somebody in Los Angeles at 12 hours difference. So that's really impossible. But so far it has been going well. As I say, it has disadvantages, and also the disadvantages of that you are not collaborating face to face in a room, which makes it sometimes a little bit like solo. You feel like, oh, I'm here alone. With a computer, people don't turn on the camera. You're like, oh, I'm talking with ChatGPT almost. I don't know. But in general, it has been actually quite well. So you need to have these guidelines, and then it works fine. And then super important, you need to bring the people always, like at least twice a year, get the people on board, today I have one of my team members is here, get to know each other, see face to face, and a couple of years later, that creating that bond, that human bond is super important.
Great. Do you have anything?
Yeah, I think the key thing from a hiring perspective for us is the culture. So it's not just the skill set, but if you have defined your kind of core values that you believe in, and make sure that within the recruitment process you have those covered within the recruitment phase. I think about 60 or 70% of the team members fail our cultural tests because even though they fit on a skill level.
What is your cultural test, though?
It's tough to identify. In the end, it's Travis.
You can tell us
Travis is the benefit of our CEO. He's very good at it.
Super secret.
But no, we've identified certain questions that can really drill down on each one of those core values.
That's not skills based.
It's not skill based, but it's based on the cultural fits.
Interesting.
To be able to identify, hey, do they fit the mentality that we're looking at?
And have you been tracking like the success rate of it, like over time when you hire people? Like the success rate of that test.
Yeah.
Cultural.
Exactly.
And it's working for you.
And it always works, yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, for us, it's been exactly the same, right? You have this, as soon as you have a cultural flag, so to say that you say, hey, we are not so sure about it, it's always a, you need to drop it
Even
straight.
if they have the right skills.
Yeah, completely, because, I would say like a negative, input in the team always have negative consequences. You need to be extremely careful with that. So for us, as soon as you have one flag in that regard, always a no-go. Always a no-go.
I'm going to put a market dimension on that as well. I think it's really important, obviously, culturally, that internally, the way that everyone works and thinks and is well aligned, becomes especially critical when you're out in the market. And let's face it, sales guys don't necessarily have the universally best reputation for being the most honourable or ethical people in all circumstances. We often talk about the dark side of a startup is having to actually go and sell software. And I think if you're not extremely careful about the sorts of people that you are bringing in and the way that they see the customer relationship and how they're going to go and represent your product in the market and how they're going to deal with the commercial side of how they get business, I think that's that can actually make or break you really, really quickly.
Yeah.
If I can maybe just add to that. So I think it's super important. Often, founder teams are looking for people that just match them. Look like them, who are like them, which is okay culturally wise. You set culture in a founding team, which is the best, I think, and then start hiring. But it's super tricky, and I guess you probably won't be able to, always scale if you just tap into one pool of people that just, represent you.
Right.
So just be aware to open up and think of all target groups available. We were opening up elderly, but you can do different ethnical groups, different genders. So, and if you only start doing that when you're already 300 people, it's super hard because nobody will feel welcome.
Right.
So
when
we invest, it's actually one part of our term sheet, and we require them to track it and create a strategy, like how will they be able to hire at scale. And if you just stay like how you are all the time, you won't be able to hire at scale.
Yeah, absolutely.
I remember at the beginning we had this sentence that says we will hire only people we can have a beer with, and then we end up with 5 guys. With 5 guys, and then eventually we say, we might need to hire a woman for the team. I mean, it will be
Let's
good
add wine
so
to
the
the
type
list.
of conversations we had, they were not good. We're like, we might need to add a lady to the team. That would be good, for the type of conversations we are having right now.
Right.
And eventually now we have more. I think we have more or less the same, but we don't have that sentence anymore. Right? So we now
that makes
hire
sense.
differently.
Okay, so I'm mindful that our time's up, and I'd like to get to any questions. But before we do, if you'd like to say one last epic fail experience, or one piece of advice, or both.
Should I? Oh,
Yeah, let's start with you and go down.
So I was thinking about it. I have one thing that has helped me, and I always give that to people that I'm talking to, is a founder can never avoid conflict. That is extremely important for anything you do, from building the product to hiring to talking to even your co-founders. I think it's extremely important to be always nice to each other and being honest and candor, but never avoid conflict, because that always has side effects and really negative consequences. We can later with a beer tell you a couple of them, but that will be, as a founder, something I say, hey, I know we are nice, I know we are, but never avoid conflict. I gave the feedback today also to one of my teammates, don't, because I know it's hard to face that, but otherwise it's literally a recipe for failure.
Yeah, super important. Robin.
Yeah, I'm going to stick with my theme of focusing on the sort of market side of this. I think you are going to come under pressure as you scale to start to make unreasonable choices, probably by investors, sometimes by customers. And I think staying laser sharp focused on what you think is important to you, what your vision is for the company, the culture that you want to espouse, and the people that you want to surround yourselves with is a really important part of that journey. If you start to dilute any of that, then you're going to start falling apart. I think it will happen in some cases, especially as you sort of start to grow quickly. You're going to make mistakes, but just keep putting one foot in front of the other and keep aiming at what it was that you thought was important to start enough to start a business in the first place, and you'll get there eventually.
Great. Nico.
There's a great quote from a Greek philosopher called Heraclitus, and he basically said that the only constant in life is change, and it really resonates a lot with a startup and especially with us, because we had all the highs and the lows, and you have to deal with that constant pressure and all the different types of challenges that comes with it. We had a scenario where we had a term sheet, we screwed up something on the website, and conversion rate tanked. The investor didn't show up to the signing. We lost the investment round. We're like, fuck. We had then the scenario, we raised our Series C, grew the team to 300 people, then a global pandemic, had to downsize to 100 people again. And now we see it though as a blessing of in disguise, because we dealt with the situation and we're able to kind of come out stronger and then focus on strategic topics instead of operational topics. So just take the challenge, know that the highs will never stay high, the lows will never stay low. They'll come out somewhere, but you just have to be able to be resilient. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Agree.
Yeah, I also have one of these great golden rules. So they always say winners don't quit, which is not true. Winners know when to say yes and when to say no. So really when to quit. Yeah. And we should have said no to much more things. So we just said yes, 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 and kept on building because we have to think big. Yeah, but start small and say no more often.
That's a very good point. I'll add one last thing, is that one of the big mistakes I made very early on when I had my startup is I really underestimated the value of a strong network and knowing your ask. I cannot stress this enough, that you would be surprised how many influential people, if you know exactly how they can help you, they're really waiting to help you. They just need to know how they can help you. And if you get that shot and a warm intro to someone, make sure you know your ask. When I didn't, I had a very good introduction to someone very influential in technology in Silicon Valley, when I had very early traction in my startup and I didn't know anything. And I was just happy to have that introduction. And in my mind, I just was going to talk to this person, to get to know each other. And I remember at some point, because influential people are busy, he asked me, how can I help you? Do you need an intro? And I wasn't prepared, so I was just like, I'd like to meet the founders of Google. And there was like 5 seconds of silence. And then he said, yeah, me too. And the call abruptly ended soon thereafter. So be prepared, know your ask. A network is an asset. Please give a warm round of applause for my amazing panelists. Does anyone have any questions for anyone? Any questions? Yeah.
There's a microphone incoming.
Oh.
Just bear in mind, every question is holding us from drinking beer. So.
Amazing talk. Thank you for your experience. I had similar with most of you. My question would be, if you could change anything from the point where are you now, in the end, would you try to go back in time and change it?
It's a good question.
Because I wouldn't.
Only one?
Yeah. You want to go for that?
Only one? No, I think it's an unfair question because, there's no regrets. I feel it's always bad if you have regrets and then you just live in the past. So knowing what, we all know today, I feel like we're all kind of happy people, so I would not change the past, even if I could, because I'm happy where I am right now. So actually, that's my answer.
And
stick to that.
And probably if you would start with what you know today, 7 years later, you could ask the same question. I could tell you, I could be a billionaire right now, and I'm not because I made those mistakes. So it's part of the journey, I guess.
Yeah, it's part of the journey. Absolutely. Yeah, and the learning has value, of course.
Definitely.
Any other questions? Yeah.
Thanks a lot. A really, really insightful conversation. You mentioned and emphasized the reflection part. So in that direction, what advice, if you may, you would give yourself 10 years ago? Because it's relatively decent timeline, but not super long time. Like reflecting yourself, like.
Mine would be, don't be so insular. Don't try to Basil's second point, I think. No man is an island. I think you need to collaborate. You need to have a good team around you. You need to be open to exchanges of ideas, and you need to be open to people challenging you on something that you think is really important. And I wasn't very good at that 20 years ago, maybe 10 years ago, less so, but 20 years ago, that definitely would have been something that I would have told myself, my younger self, to be more focused on.
I would like to just repeat what was said before. I think don't underestimate a network and what you can do. And that happens to me exactly one-to-one. Talking to somebody and then, oh, what do you need? And you're like, what? I'm happy talking to you right now. Man. What do you mean by that? So I think it's extremely important to get yourself out there. If you have built a company, you have a team, or you have done something, it's already extraordinary, right? Yeah. Like, it's not many people are doing that. So believe in that, and be with the confidence to be able to build that network, and actually prepare your questions before. So I think like to me, I will tell myself to avoid that situation that he had and I had.
Yeah, I think like really the core issue that leads to a lot of these things is that when we're technology founders, we think it's about the technology, but it's not. It's about the people. And a lot of times we focus too much on our product and the technology, but it is at the end about how it affects someone's life as a solution, or the network of people that you have. So we forget about the people aspect, but it's all about the people.
Yeah, I think it's just it's empathy, and some of us, like maybe this is something you learn at very early age on. It's your parents, everybody around you, they define like how much empathy do you have. Yeah. So and it's we're network, yes, but I think I also had to learn to have even more empathy going forward.
Yeah.
So I always saw, people as a mirror of myself, and I definitely saw that my co-founder Claudia, she even had more empathy than I did. I cared a bit less about, the people around me. Yeah. So I tried to, ask them more and listen more.
Yeah.
And make them feel more comfortable around me.
Great point.
So
yeah. Any other questions? Yep. Oh, okay.
Hi, thanks. Loads of fun, really good. I work in tech, so I'm typically like a product-focused CTO, like really much making things happen in tech kind of person. I've been telling people in technology for about 4 or 5 years now that technology and the cost of technology is always the worst part of getting a new business off the ground, and that money will not stand for that forever. There will be a way around this problem. Just today, we've seen so many, AWS have been providing amazing things to reduce the cost of development anyway. All the serverless stuff makes the route to delivery much more quick. Today, I've been seeing things like code catalyst, which also reduces the barrier as well to entry. Everything's getting shorter and shorter. You guys can see what the investment hunger is like and appetite for the future. How much downward pressure do you think we will see as technologists on that, I think, unacceptable level? Even as a technologist, I think it's disgracefully expensive to get a product off the ground, like X million pounds to get your V1 or whatever. That's ridiculous, right? So, but how much is that an expectation? How much are you in the investment world, those of you who are connected with it, how much are you aware of how possible it is to drive that cost down even in the next few years? And is there an appetite for that?
Karina?
So our startups that we invest in, they have not gone to the stage yet, because we're super early stage, where you have those costs exploding. Although I have to say, we invest in digital health. So we have different kinds of costs, there's to get your CE approval, to get your FDA approval. So those are also huge costs, which often don't even have anything to do with the technical product, even though it's digital health, but the majority is just to get your health product out. So, even if you're in a different kind of industry or vertical, those costs go up. We see them just go up. So for example, My Sugar was founded, last decade, and they spent, I think, he said, I think $150,000 back then to get FDA approval. Now you have to calculate over 1 million, 1.5. It's 10x of the costs, just because there's more and more regulation. So I'm not seeing those costs going down, rather rising with more and more regulation coming.
I think there's a timeline aspect to this, which is quite interesting to think about as well. AWS especially has done a lot to sort of reduce the cost of being able to build an MVP and launch it. I mean, if you've got a good idea, rather than, if you're not trying to boil the ocean, you can get an MVP out to market on 3 tiers here, really easily. But the sort of I was listening to a presentation downstairs about a bank that's launched a digital bank, and the CEO of that saying that basically every component in that is designed to be replaceable every 2 years, because he knows otherwise his successor will be standing there in 10 years' time saying, yeah, but all that legacy stuff they did in the digital bank 10 years ago. And I think that's the sort of the other thing to keep an eye on is the timeline of what it might be. Less expensive now, but what technical debt are you building, and how long do you have to sort of what's the cost of replacing that, and what's the timeline you're going to have to be able to sort of invest into that in the future as well. I think whether it's AWS, whether it's Google Cloud, whichever platforms you're using.
No, it's AWS.
It's AWS, obviously.
Let's be honest with you.
Obviously, Google's more expensive. Sorry, Google. I think that timeline factor is an important part of your question as well. It's not just getting off the ground; it's keeping it going. Right?
Yeah. And you mentioned Code Catalyst. So generally, generative AI, how it's reducing the size of developer teams to build stuff, that's going to have a humongous impact. Humongous impact. You're going to be able to build something with. I mean, I doubt it's going to. I don't think it's going to replace software developers, but it's going to drastically reduce the teams. They'll be like pilots, Yeah. Oh.
So my question is actually about when you go to an investor, you tell them, you try to define them who your ideal customer is. But as time progresses, the customer base that you own also gradually tends to change with the market fit that you're trying to achieve. So when the investors come back to you and question, why are you trying to do this? What's your answer?
So we challenge everything that's being said, and what we try to find out is basically, are you willing to adapt? It's not trying to defend your customer base, like per se, this is it, and this is the only truth. It's showing them that you are willing to adapt and you're listening to the market. I value it a lot when people say, listen, we have that hypothesis, and on the way, we will try to answer it, and otherwise, there's ABC. So you just show them that you're willing to adapt and that you're flexible.
I think that's a really important point. When someone comes to a pitch, their idea of a customer profile is a hypothesis and nothing more. Yeah. Even when you get market fit, then then you're starting to form what we call the ideal customer profile. That's what you're going to go and try and sell to and scale. But even then, as you're scaling, that will evolve over time. You just have to remain open to that happening.
The reason for this question was that investors are usually in the fear that when you try to acquire a new sort of customer that you didn't own before, versus the customer that you already had, you tend to kind of, find a mismatch in the trade-off, the new customer might not stay with you for long, but what happens with the old customer? So when you go for the new one, will the old one stay there or leave? Because your amount of attention for the old one reduces.
We have plenty. 2021 was a year of iOS updates and loads of B2C startups pivoting. It's not a pivot; it's a different go-to-market strategy to B2B. They're not all dead, So and people have to adjust. And it's good if you have revenue stream coming in from B2C still, and you can cross-finance your B2B pivot. So this is. Totally.
The only thing I was going to say on that, though, is if you're basically talking about entering different verticals or different areas, then just be careful about when you're doing that and why you're doing that. If it's part of a carefully sort of considered strategy or a sort of a response to a market need that you can see that you can actually sort of start to enter and serve different customers, that's great. If you're doing it in a reactive way that says they seem to be willing to pay me money, so I'll run it, especially in enterprise, right? That. Your worst nightmare is a big customer who's willing to pay you $10 million to do something, because then you end up building the product in their image. It ends up being sort of a completely bespoke thing for them, and it doesn't have a general market applicability anymore. So I think it depends on the scenario as to why you're looking at different customers and changing the profile.
You said it's important very early on to focus on diversity in hiring, so to foster a culture that is inclusive, even when your company grows bigger. And I would say we're pretty aware of this, but we are just having trouble finding a lot of people. We're still very male and white as a software company, but it's also, we don't get as many applications by minority groups. So I'm wondering if you have any tips on how we could try to maybe change our listings or different places that we could look for more diverse people to hire?
Yeah, you can do loads of A/B testing, to be honest. So The position I was hired for example, was listed twice. Once they wrote investment manager, and the second one was community manager. It was the same job listing, just women applied to the community manager position and guys applied to the investment manager position. I didn't apply, they reached out to me, but you know, it's simple A/B testing and just being aware that there are differences, and culturally, like really like talking like a language on the website with pictures, you know, showing like all kinds of varieties that are out there, helps a lot. And I mean, there's platforms, there's job platforms, you know, where you can find a specific group of people. So posting there, reaching out is the most important. And I think hiring early on to try, you know, the next hires, just insist that they are diverse. So if you're then 10 people and you have 2, 3 that are different from the 8 before, already shows a different picture. So funnily, we were 2 women and 1 male founder, and our first hires were all guys, but they didn't drink beer. So we got you know, not all religions, they do drink alcohol. So all our tech team didn't drink any beer. So it's just, yeah.
So but I think to add on that, I think like something that happened to us is when we had these 5, 6 people, you know, men in the team, we had this wild idea of saying why if we prioritize certain hires because we need you know, a woman in the team. Mistake. At the end of the day, you're hiring because you want to, you know, you need somebody who creates value for the business and then at the end for your users. So I think it's extremely important that you're really careful with that, because you know, you're not hiring whether it's a woman or man. You know, you need the best person for that specific role. So we went that path a little bit, and then we realized that's a mistake. We end up hiring a woman in our team. You know, now we are 50-50. But we had this wild thought at the beginning, and we say, okay, what if? No, I think that's a mistake as well.
I think it comes also back to the whole way you think about the business and what your vision is, right? I mean, if you're building a product that's aimed at, you know, tech-savvy 20 to 30-year-old white guys, you know, then the people that come and work for you and the way that you sort of engender that sort of behavior in cuts across everything that you do. And if you're starting with diversity in terms of, you know, what your product's objectives are, and the sorts of people that you then need in the team to sort of create a useful mesh of ideas and outlooks and ways of doing things to build that, then you're kind of priming yourself for a bit more success in that way. I'd say there's probably a bit of a demographic timeline thing here as well, that we're still not doing enough in schools and universities to really promote STEM and engineering especially, and interesting sort of subjects that we're all interested in to people who wouldn't naturally have sort of been pushed towards it 20 years ago, 10 years ago even. So.
Just be aware of your own bias that you carry in you all the time. Like, am I just talking my language, or am I talking other people's language?
Exactly that, yeah.
Go out and ask how they want to be addressed.
Okay. Thank you so much for being with us. We really enjoyed this, and thank you all for being a lovely panel. I'm going to miss you guys.
Thank you, Basil.
You should have a beer.
Go team fail.
Team fail.